Welcome back to ARC PDX. In dollars and cents, President Trump is touting that there is no tariff-caused inflation. But some economists say that could soon change. This morning, we're looking at the impacts of tariffs and how to manage your finances while they're in effect. So joining us this morning is Nathan Cox, CEO of Inroads Credit Union. Nathan, thanks so much for joining us this morning on ARC PDX.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, so, we've been talking for a while about tariffs. There's so much talk about it, but let's just boil it down to something easy to understand. Like, what are the top 3 ways that tariffs will impact us?
Well, typically, it's going to affect the consumer because the price of what we pay on certain items will go up. So as an example, steel. Well, steel goes into appliances, steel goes into cars, so the cost of appliances and cars would go up. So, and also when you import anything for a small business, their costs are going to go up. So as an example, shoes, coffee, things like this, the prices will rise and the small business will need to pass along those costs to the consumer. So unfortunately, if you're on a fixed income or limited income budget, you're going to be affected pretty significantly.
Okay, yeah, that leads to my next question. Is that really the group that's going to be affected the most, or who else is going to be impacted the most by these tariffs?
Well, we're all going to be impacted a lot, but on a disproportionate basis, lower income or fixed income people are impacted more. And that's because they have limited income flexibility. Their income is set. So the key is, if generally speaking, tariffs will go up about 15 to 25%, we all have to reduce our discretionary spending about 15 to 25%. But that's harder if you're on a fixed income or limited budget because your choices are less.
Yeah, that makes sense. You did kind of list off some of the products that will be affected. Can you give us a kind of a big list of what we can expect to be affected by this?
Generally speaking, if you buy a consumer good that has some materials or some part coming from outside the U.S., you're going to be impacted. So, coffee, steel, clothing, shoes, there's a variety of different things. And I'll use steel as an example. Yes, the United States has a big steel manufacturer, but we also import steel from Canada, from Europe, from China, from Australia, and all these countries are having tariffs put on them. So it's going to be a pretty big impact.
So what's your advice? What can we do? How can we budget for these tariffs?
Well, we need to tighten up the budget. So discretionary incomes like eating out or travel, those things need to be cut back. Easier said than done, but you have to remain committed to it. And then also, if you are on a fixed income or lower income budget, talk to your financial institution, whether it's a bank or a credit union, talk to them about your budget or your debt plan. And that's where credit unions come in. We're pretty flexible. And our mantra is people helping people. So regardless of your situation, we're all going to link arms and get through this.
All right. Yeah, I hope so. You did mention small businesses earlier. Can you tell us how they'll be affected?
Well, a lot of small businesses import things through their supply chain, so their costs are going to go up. So as an example, if that tariff is 15%, they're not going to be able to swallow that entire cost. So more likely than not, they're going to pass along that cost to the consumer. So whether you're a consumer and an end user, you're going to get impacted, or if you're a small business owner, your margins will be impacted. So we all get impacted by the cost of tariffs.
And, we've heard some numbers being floated around about, like how much the average American family may be paying, more once these tariffs take effect. Do you have any sort of estimate, like a base number that maybe the average person would be spending?
Well, as CEO of my company, we look at a lot of data, and I'm relying on about a 15 to 20% increase in cost. So when I speak to my business members and consumers, I keep that number in mind, and we talk about that from a budgeting standpoint. We're putting together our 2026 budget, and we have to factor in, things like tariffs because it's going to cost our members more. So we have to build that in.
All right. Nathan Cox, CEO of Inroads Credit Union. Thank you so much for joining us on ARC PDX.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.